Hi, I'm Karen. We're here at Montevilla Sewing Center, and today we're talking about the Pfaff Expression 710. In this video, I'm going to show you the accessories that come with your machine. To start with, we have the book, which tells you about the accessories, of course, and also how to use your machine. We also have lots of videos here on our YouTube channel about this machine. So, put that back there. We also have, of course, the cord. This is the power cord. And you have the foot control. Both of those plug in over on the side here. Now the foot control has this cord storage in the bottom, which is really handy to have. And when you use your foot control, you can put this right in there like that, and that makes a nice pathway to keep the cord nice and neat. Okay, and it's a nice wide foot control, as you can see. Then we've also got a good hard cover that helps protect your machine when you're traveling, or if you've got your machine stored in a closet or something, it protects your machine. There's your cover. Now over here we have various accessories. Now this is a thread net. So if you're using decorative threads, kind of like this kind of threads that maybe tend to unspool by themselves, then you can put this thread net around your thread and it keeps it contained while you're sewing. Okay, there's the thread net, and then we have, of course, our seam ripper. Now this is what you would use to unstitch seams. You can also use this when you open the buttonholes. If you make a buttonhole, this is what you would use. Over here is a stylus. Now I don't have the machine on right now, but when you touch various selections, you do so with the stylus. And it's better to use that than your fingers because you could leave fingerprints on this, and it's easier to just be very precise with the stylus. Also make sure that you don't use anything metal on your touch screen. It should always either be like your fingernail or the stylus. Then we have various sizes of spool caps. Now the spool caps are meant to keep the spool on the spool pin. This is a horizontal spool pin, and here's a small spool cap on this small spool. So for your larger spools, you would use this size, like for this. And then there's a medium size for medium-sized spools, like that. This one here is a felt pad. Now the purpose of the felt pad is when you're using a vertical spool pin, you can make either one of these vertical. You'd put your spool cap like that, put your spool, the felt pad like this, and then your spool on top like this. That felt pad acts like a little brake so that when you stop sewing, the spool doesn't continue to spin. That's what that felt pad is for. And then, of course, having the spool cap on the bottom gives it, the spool some stability. Over here we have a needle set. Now it has different kinds of needles for different kinds of sewing applications. You have your universal needles, size 70, 80, and 90. You have a wing needle for specialty sewing. It's a special technique. Stretch needles are going to be for your knits and your swimwear. Jeans needles, that's pretty obvious for your denim and canvas. And then embroidery needles. Now that is going to be for your embroidery type thread, which is often a rayon thread. If you use a regular needle, then the thread tends to get kind of shredded. But the embroidery needle has a special eye that protects your rayon embroidery thread. Now this doesn't do embroidery per se, but you have many stitches that you can use that nice shiny embroidery thread in, and this is the kind of needle that you would use for that kind of thread. Then we have the different feet. Now you have a foot that comes on your machine. It's an all-purpose foot. Okay, let's take that off of there. Here we go. It's an all-purpose foot. It's the 0A foot. The decorative stitch foot looks a lot like it, except on the back it has this groove here, and that's meant for when you are sewing like maybe some lettering or something where you're putting a lot of thread into your fabric that helps it flow right through there. That's what that's for. We also have another foot here which is similar, but it doesn't have where you can put the IDT. That's your walking foot. That's what that's for. This is for sewing satin stitches. So if you have a satin stitch where your stitch length is very close together, you don't want to have your IDT making any kind of vibration, so that's why you would use that. Also, when you're selecting various stitches, it will recommend for you which foot to use on your machine. Then this is your blind hem foot. Now blind hem looks like this, where you can hardly see any stitches at all on the outside and on the inside. This is how you would form your blind hem, and this is how it would stitch along there. Also, finishing the edges of your fabric, of your woven fabric, especially your lightweight woven fabric, this is a really good one to use for that. And you can move this little red guide by turning the dial, turning the wheel, and you can do a nice overcast edge, and the wire there will help keep your edge nice and flat. Here's an example of that. See how much flatter that is? It gives some slack in the stitches. That's what that's for. And then this is your zipper foot. Now it has 2 slots for your IDT because it can be put on either side of your foot holder. That way you can move your needle over and get it nice and close to your zipper teeth on either side. This is a manual buttonhole foot. The book tells about how to do that. It's really good for doing horizontal buttonholes on shirts because you can put the edge of your shirt right there and get an even distance from the edge of your shirt. This is your automatic buttonhole foot, and this plugs into your machine. When you select your buttonhole, you would measure your button right up here on your cover and enter in that value in your machine, and that way your machine knows how long to make your buttonhole. It's a really cool feature. Okay, and then this is your free motion foot. You can also use this for thread painting. This fits on your machine. You disengage your IDT, fits on your machine with that little bar there, and you can use this for free motion quilting. In case you're not familiar with free motion quilting, here's an example of it that I just kind of stitched this out quickly. But this is something that a lot of people use to attach the backing, batting, and top of their quilt together. This is the foot you would use. And then we have the quilt piecing foot. Now, quilt piecing, in case you're not familiar with that, looks like this. So there's a lot of different ways to quilt piece, but one thing you always have in common with those is you have a 1/4 inch seam allowance. This makes it so that if you line up the raw edge of your fabric as you're stitching, that seam ends up right along the 1/4 inch. And then you've got other markings on here, so if you want to start and stop a 1/4 inch away from the seam line, you can do that. Inside here, you can even make an 1/8 inch seam allowance. Then you have various bobbins or assortment, bobbins, they're all the same. They all say Pfaff on them, so make sure that you get Pfaff brand bobbins, not some other brand, because these will work best in your machine. And they say Pfaff on one side, so you know that's the top. Like when you wind your bobbin, you have it this way, and when you put it in your machine, you have it this way. It's actually got a little place in here which helps kind of grab onto your thread and help hold it tightly as it's winding on the bobbin spindle. Then this is your multi-purpose tool. I really like this tool. One thing I really like about it is this right here is what you use to put your needles in. So when you go to change your needle, poke your needle right in there. See that flat edge right there? You'd match that up with the flat side of the needle shank. And then you hold that up, and it makes it like a handle for putting your needle in. Another thing that's good for is if you're sewing a jeans hem and it's really thick because of that flat felled seam, as you get close to that, your foot is going to want to kind of tilt upwards a little bit. Well, put this behind your foot as you're sewing, and that levels it out, and that helps the machine stitch right across the seam. So this is nice for that. It's got 2 thicknesses, the wider and the narrower. So that's your multi-purpose tool. And then you have your screwdriver. The screwdriver is good for taking your needle out, changing needle. If you need to take your foot holder off, you can do that. And then it's also good for prying up the needle plate so that you can clean underneath your machine. So this is a good little handy, nice short tool with these side wings on it to help you turn the screwdriver. Then this is your cleaning brush. Obviously, we'd use it for cleaning out the lint out of your machine. Then this here is a quilting bar or quilting guide, but it's also meant for if you just want to sew parallel lines of stitches and you want to make sure that the stitch distance stays even. You put that back here on the back of your foot. Actually, I'll put that one back on there, but anyway. Put that on there. Do your first line of stitching, move your fabric over and line it up with this part of your guide, and then do your second line of stitching. It's really nice for if you're doing quilting where you want to do a kind of a crosshatch pattern on your quilt. Use that in combination with your IDT. It's wonderful results. And then there's a little screw on top of the foot holder, and that's what holds this in place. So once you've taken that out, just tighten that back down there. Then we also have a cleaning cloth. Now this is a nice microfiber cleaning cloth for cleaning your machine, but it's also really good for making sure that your screen is nice and smudge free. So that is the basic accessories that come with your machine. I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you have, give us a thumbs up. And if you have comments or questions, you can leave those in the area down below. Like I said before, we've got lots of other videos on this machine and other machines here on our Montevilla YouTube channel, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Bye.